Jake Collins wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked under the blazing sun of Zarian Prime. The ancient ruins stretched for miles across the desert landscape like broken teeth, reaching toward the sky. He had been digging here for 3 months, with his team searching for clues about the long-dead Vorthan civilization. The crystalline structure they had uncovered yesterday was unlike anything in the historical records. It stood 20 feet tall and pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from within. Jake could see something inside the crystal, but the surface was too clouded to make out details. Commander. Lisa Barnes approached from the main camp. Her military uniform was dusty from the desert wind. She watched Jake as he carefully brushed sand away from the base of the crystal structure. "Jake, this is incredible," she said. Her voice carried both excitement and worry. "The energy readings are off the charts. Our sensors can't even classify what this thing is made of." Jake nodded without looking up from his work. He had spent his whole life studying dead civilizations, but this felt different. The crystal hummed with an energy that made his skin tingle. When he got close, something was definitely alive inside the rest of the archaeological team gathered around as Jake continued his careful excavation. Dr. Amy Foster, their xenobiologist, took readings with her scanner, while Captain Ruby Chen monitored communications from orbit. The USS Endeavour waited in high orbit, ready to evacuate them if needed. As Jake cleared more sand away, the crystal became clearer. He could now see the outline of a figure inside. It appeared to be a woman, but her proportions were slightly different from human. She was tall and elegant, with features that seemed both beautiful and alien. Her skin had a pale blue tint, and her hair was white as starlight. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to symbols carved around the base of the crystal. "These look like Vorthon script, but much older than anything we have found before." Lisa knelt beside him, studying the ancient writing. "Can you translate it?" Jake traced the symbols with his finger. "Some of it, the main symbol here, means Empress or ruler. This one means sleep or waiting, and this part seems to be about a prophecy of some kind, something about a chosen one who would awaken her." The crystal pulsed brighter as Jake touched the symbols. The humming grew louder, and the figure inside seemed to shift slightly. Jake felt drawn to place, his palm flat against the crystal surface. The moment his skin made contact, everything changed. Light exploded from the crystal, blinding everyone for several seconds. When their vision cleared, the crystal was cracking with lines of brilliant energy spreading across its surface. The woman inside opened her eyes, and they glowed with the same blue light as the crystal. Jake stumbled backward as the crystal shattered into 1,000 pieces that dissolved into sparkling dust. The woman stepped forward onto the desert sand, as if she had been waiting for this moment for eternity. She was even more beautiful and terrifying than she had appeared through the crystal. Her voice spoke directly into their minds, without moving her lips. "I am Zarafel Last, Empress of the Vorthan Empire. I have waited 50,000 years for the Chosen One to wake me from my slumber." Jake felt her mental touch like ice water in his veins. But strangely, it did not hurt or control him like he expected from the old records about Vorthan telepathy. The others grabbed their heads in pain, but Jake remained standing. "Interesting," she said aloud this time. Her voice was musical, but carried immense power. "Your mind resists my touch. You are the one spoken of in the prophecies. The immune one who can stand equal to Vorthon might." Lisa struggled to her feet despite the telepathic pressure. "Who are you? What do you want?" Zarafel turned her glowing gaze toward Lisa. "I am death and rebirth. I am the ruler of 1,000,000 worlds. I am the one who shaped galaxies to my will." She looked back at Jake. "But I am also something new, something I have never been before. I am chosen, and I choose." In return, Jake felt his heart racing. This was first contact with a being of immense power, and she seemed focused entirely on him. "What do you mean, chosen?" She smiled, and the expression was both lovely and predatory. "You awakened me when no other could. Your species, your mind, it is resistant to our psychic dominance. This makes you valuable beyond measure." The prophecies spoke of a race that would rise to match us in time. "It seems that time has come." The ground trembled as more crystal structures began emerging from the sand across the ruins. Ancient Vorthon technology was awakening. In response to Zarafel presence, ships that had been buried for millennia pushed through the desert surface. Lisa activated her communicator. Endeavor, this is Barnes. Emergency evacuation needed now. Unknown alien technology is activating planet-wide. Jake watched in amazement as the ruins transformed into a gleaming city. The broken stones reassembled themselves into towering spires that reached toward the clouds. Rivers of energy flowed between the buildings, bringing everything back to life. As gestured at the restored city, all of this is yours now. Chosen One, I offer you an empire that spans the galaxy. Countless worlds will bow before your name as they once bowed before mine. You need only accept your place at my side. Jake looked around at his terrified team, then back at the beautiful alien Empress. This was beyond anything they had trained for in first contact protocols. She was offering him power on a scale that humans had never imagined, but something in her eyes made him think. She was more lonely than threatening. Why me? He asked. What makes humans so special? She stepped closer, and he could feel the energy radiating from her. Your species has something mine lost long ago, the ability to choose freely, the ability to resist domination even from beings far more powerful than yourselves. My people ruled through fear and psychic control, but you cannot be controlled in the same way. This makes you fascinating to me. Before Jake could respond, alarms began sounding from orbit. Lisa listened to her communicator with growing alarm. Multiple ships approaching, fast, unknown design but massive energy. Nasher looked up at the sky with mild interest. My old enemies have sensed my awakening. They will come to finish what they started 50,000 years ago. But now I have something they do not expect, an ally who cannot be broken by psychic force. She turned back to Jake with an expression that was almost shy, despite her obvious power. I know this is overwhelming for you, Chosen One, but I promise to protect you and your people if you will stay beside me. I have been alone for so very long. Jake realized that this ancient Empress, for all her power, was like a child in some ways. She had been asleep for 50 millennia and was now awakening to find her empire gone, her people dead, and enemies approaching. The loneliness in her voice was heartbreaking. The restored city around them hummed with defensive energy as alien ships began appearing in the atmosphere. Jake knew that their simple archaeological expedition had just become the most important first contact in human history. The fate of both species might depend on what happened next. The USS Endeavor shuddered as alien ships filled the sky above Zarian Prime. Jake watched from the bridge as Zarafel stood calmly beside him. Her presence made the air itself feel charged with energy. The ancient Empress studied the approaching vessels with the interest of someone watching insects. Commander Barnes coordinated the evacuation while Admiral Kate Morrison appeared on the main screen from Earth Fleet headquarters. Her expression was grim as she took in the situation. Jake could see the fear in her eyes when she looked at Sarah Falklands. What is the status of the alien entity, Morrison? A Schedurafel answered before Jake could speak. I am no entity, human admiral. I am Zarafel, Empress of the Vorthan Empire, and I have claimed this one as my chosen consort. Your species interests me greatly. Morrison's jaw dropped. Jake felt his face turn red at being called a consort in front of his superiors. Zarafel seemed to think this was normal. She had mentioned ancient prophecies and chosen ones, but Jake was starting to realize she might have some very different ideas about their relationship. The alien ships opened fire on the planet's surface. Their weapons carved deep gouges in the desert, but could not penetrate the energy shields now protecting the restored city. Zarafel watched the attack with mild Enoyansakithfer and his shadow consortium. She said, they still believe they can destroy me as they did my empire. How little they have learned in 50,000 years. With a gesture from her hand, 3 of the attacking ships simply stopped existing. They vanished without explosion or debris, as if they had never been there. The remaining vessels immediately retreated to a safe distance. Jake felt sick at the casual display of power. Dr. Amy Foster ran scans on Zarafel from across the bridge. Her readings showed energy levels that should have been impossible. The alien Empress noticed the attention and smiled at her. You "Study me, little scientist," she said. "Good. Your curiosity pleases my chosen one. I can see his fondness for knowledge reflected in your minds." Zimi looked confused. "Jake is fond of knowledge, your majesty, but I do not understand. The connections are full." Tilted her head. "My people once shared thoughts as easily as you share words. I forget that your species experiences such isolation from each other, but through my chosen one, I can sense the emotions and thoughts of those he cares for. It is a fascinating new experience for me." Jake realized she was reading his emotional connections to his team like a map. This was both touching and terrifying. The most powerful being in the galaxy was learning about friendship and loyalty through his feelings. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward Earth. Zarafel spent the journey asking Jake endless questions about human customs and relationships. She seemed particularly fascinated by concepts like dating and marriage on my worlds. Mating was arranged for genetic optimization or political alliance, she told him, but you speak of choosing partners based on emotional compatibility. This is inefficient, but intriguing. Tell me more about these courtship rituals. Jake tried to explain dating, while the bridge crew pretended not to listen. Zarafel absorbed every word with the intensity of a student cramming for exams. When he mentioned bringing flowers, she immediately created a bouquet of crystalline roses from thin RR. These appropriate, she asked. The flowers sparkled with inner light and smelled like starlight. They were beautiful beyond anything that grew on Earth. They arrived at Earth to find the entire defense fleet mobilized. Admiral Morrison met them at the space station with President Helen Cross. Jake had never been in the same room as the president before, but here he was, introducing her to a galactic empress who kept referring to him as her chosen own. Ezerafel was polite to the human leaders, but clearly saw Jake as the only one worth her full attention. She offered to share advanced technology with humanity in exchange for Jake remaining at her side. The president and admiral exchanged worried looks. "Your Majesty," President Cross said carefully, "we appreciate your offer of alliance, but Jake Collins is a free citizen. He cannot be traded or given away, sir." Afel looked confused. "I do not seek to trade for him. I have chosen him, and he has awakened me. This creates a bond according to the ancient ways. He is free to refuse, but I hope he will stay willingly." Jake found himself in the strange position of having to explain human independence to a being who had ruled billions. She listened carefully, but seemed to think human freedom was a quaint custom rather than a fundamental right. Over the following days, Jake learned more about Zarafel. Past her empire had controlled most of the galaxy through psychic domination. The Vorthan could overwhelm the minds of other species and force them to serve. But eventually her subjects had found ways to resist, and the empire fell in a great rebellion. She had entered stasis to wait for the prophecies to be fulfilled. Now she spoke of rebuilding, but seemed more interested in impressing Jake than conquering worlds. When he mentioned liking music, she created a symphony that played across 3 star systems. When he said he enjoyed sunsets, she painted nebulae in brilliant colors. Just for him, the gifts were overwhelming. Jake tried to explain that humans preferred smaller, more personal gestures. Immediately shrunk her next gift down to a small moon that she placed in orbit around Earth as a friendship bracelet. "Sure, customs are delightfully intimate," she said. "I have never given such thought to pleasing another being. It is a pleasant challenge." Jake began to understand that for all her powers, Zarafel had never experienced genuine affection. Her empire had been built on fear and control. She had subjects, not friends, servants, not companions. The concept of someone staying with her by choice was entirely new. Dr. Amy Foster conducted extensive studies of Zarafel biology and abilities. Her findings were both amazing and terrifying. The alien Empress could manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level. She could travel faster than light. Without a ship, her telepathic range covered entire solar systems. But she also discovered something unexpected. Zarafel emotional development had been stunted by 50,000 years of absolute power. She had the cosmic abilities of a goddess, but the social skills of someone who had never needed to consider another person's feelings. Jake started teaching her about human emotions through movies, books, and simple conversations. She watched romantic comedies with the same intensity she had once. Applied to military strategy, she asked detailed questions about why characters made choices based on feelings, rather than logic. Meanwhile, reports came in of alien forces gathering throughout the galaxy. Word of Zarafel awakening had spread and old enemies were forming new alliances to destroy her before she could rebuild her empire. They did not know she was more interested in learning about birthday parties than conquering worlds. Captain Ruby Chen brought news of Shadow Consortium fleets massing near the border. Her stealth ship Nighthawk had been gathering intelligence on enemy movements. They were planning something big. Zarafel received the news calmly, but Jake saw worry in her glowing eyes. For the first time since awakening, she seemed uncertain. She had grown fond of her new experiences with Jake and did not want them to end. Could destroy them all, she told him. One thought from me and every enemy fleet would become cosmic dust, but you have shown me that strength alone is not enough. There must be another wage. Jake realized that his simple human emotions were changing a being who had once reshaped galaxies. The most dangerous woman in the universe was learning to value life and friendship over power and dominance. But her enemies were coming and they would not be interested in her newfound gentleness. The storm was gathering and Jake knew that everything they had built together would soon be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. The attack came without warning. Jake was showing Zarafel how to play chess when alarms screamed throughout the space station. Captain Ruby Chen's voice crackled over the communications system. Enemy ships dropping out of hyperspace. Massive fleet approaching fast. Zarafel stood gracefully from the chessboard, her expression shifting from curious student to ancient warrior in an instant. The change was both beautiful and terrifying. Jake could feel power radiating from her like heat from a star. They dare attack while I am learning your games, she said. Her voice carried a dangerous edge that made the air itself tremble. I will teach them the price of interruption. Wait, Jake said, grabbing her arm. The touch sent electricity through his nerves, but he held on. Zarafel, you said there had to be another way. Remember what we talked about? She looked down at his hand on her arm. Her glowing eyes softened slightly. You are right, my chosen one. I promise to try your way first. But if they threaten you, I will not hold back. Through the station windows, they could see the enemy fleet. Hundreds of ships and formations that blocked out the stars. Jake recognized some designs from historical databases. HFY Shadow Consortium had allied with other ancient enemies of the Vorthan Empire. Admiral Morrison's voice came over the intercom. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Enemy vessels are targeting Earth. Zarafel closed her eyes, and Jake felt her consciousness expand. Across space, she was touching the minds of the enemy commanders, reading their intentions. Her face grew sad as she opened her eyes again. They remember only the old empire, she told Jake. They expect me to strike first, with overwhelming force. They have prepared for the Empress who conquered through fear. But they do not know about the one who has learned to care. The first wave of enemy ships opened fire. Earth Defense Fleet engaged them in desperate combat, but they were vastly outnumbered. Jake watched good people dying, while Zarafel restrained herself from ending the battle instantly. Let me help them, he said. You can stop this without destroying Evriana. Zarafel nodded, and reached for his hand. The moment their fingers touched, Jake felt his consciousness expand beyond his body. Suddenly he could sense every ship in the battle, every mind filled with fear and anger he was connected to. Zarafel vast awareness, but somehow still himself. Together they reached out to the enemy fleet. Jake provided the emotional understanding, while Zarafel supplied the power. Instead of crushing their minds, they gently touched each commander's thoughts, showing them memories of the new Zarafel, the one who created flowers and learned about friendship. Effect was immediate. Confusion rippled through the enemy ranks as commanders experienced emotions they had never felt. From a Vorthan ships began holding their fire, uncertain whether this was some new form of attack. One by one enemy vessels began withdrawing from the battle. Their commanders could not understand what they were experiencing, but they knew it was not the conquest they had expected. Kethfer flagship remained, but the rest of his fleet scatterjake collapsed as Zarafel released. The mental connection, the effort of touching so many minds at once left him drained but exhilarated. They had found a third option between conquest and destruction impressive. Kethfer's voice boomed across all communications channels, but parlor tricks will not save you, Zarafel. I remember the real you. The one who burned worlds for sorrowful, stepped forward, her power building around her like a storm. You remember correctly, old enemy. But that Empress died in the crystal tomb. The one who stands before you now has learned something you never could. She has learned to love thee. Word hung in space like a challenge. Kethfer laughed, but Jake could hear uncertainty in the sound. Love is weakness, Zarafel. It is what destroyed your empire when your subjects finally found the strength to rebel. Perhaps, she replied, but it is also what gives me strength. You could never understand. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Kethfer attacked with weapons designed to destroy planets, but Zarafel defended without striking back. She turned his energy beams into harmless light shows. She transformed his missiles into butterflies that flew through space. Jake watched in amazement as she demonstrated perfect control. She could have ended Kethfer's life 1,000 times, but instead, she showed him the futility of violence. Her restraint was more impressive than any display of raw power. Crew frustrated as his attacks accomplished nothing. You have grown weak, he snarled. The old Zarafel would have ended this by now. She has grown strong, Jake said, surprising himself by speaking. The old Zarafel conquered through fear, but fear fades love. And Sharafil smiled at him with such warmth that stars seemed dim by comparison. My chosen one speaks, truly, Kethfer. I offer you the same choice I offer everyone. Join us willingly or leave in peace, but I will not be the destroyer. I once was Cathor's ship, weapons powered down. Jake could see the ancient being struggling with concepts. He had never encountered the Shadow Consortium leader, had expected war and conquest, but found compassion instead. This is not over, Zarafel, Kethfer said finally. Others will come who remember your true nature. They will not be swayed by this performance of gentleness. After he withdrew, Zarafel turned to Jake, with exhaustion clear in her glowing eyes. That was harder than destroying them would have been, she admitted. Showing mercy to those who hurt you requires strength. I never knew I possessed. Jake took her hand again, feeling the connection between them strengthen. You did the right thing. Some of them will remember this day, and maybe choose a different path. Then the days that followed, reports came in from across the galaxy. News of restraint and Jake influence spread among the former Vorthan subjects. Some species that had lived in fear for millennia began to hope that a new age might be possible. Dr. Amy Foster studied the recordings of the battle. Her analysis showed that Zarafel power had actually increased rather than decreased. The emotional connections she was forming enhanced her abilities in ways pure domination never could. Sorrowful herself seemed amazed by this development. She spent hours discussing it with Jake, trying to understand how caring for others made her stronger rather than weaker. He explained human concepts like teamwork and mutual support, while she shared insights from 50,000 years of cosmic awareness President Cross authorized. The construction of a new diplomatic facility where Zarafel could meet with representatives from across the galaxy. Jake found himself appointed as Humanity First Setup Psychologist, a job that apparently involved teaching ancient empresses about proper dating etiquette. Truby Chen returned from another scouting mission with troubling news. The remaining enemy factions were uniting under a new leader, someone calling themselves the Collective. They claimed to represent all those who had suffered under Vorthan rule. Jake felt Zarafel pain when she heard this news. For the first time since awakening, she was confronted with the full scope of her past actions. The weight of 50,000 years of oppression settled on her shoulders like a physical burden. I cannot undo what I have done, she told him quietly. How can I ask for forgiveness from those I have wronged so deeply? Start by admitting the wrong, Jake replied, and then you spend however long it takes making it right. She looked at him with wonder. You would stay with me, even knowing what I have done, the lives I have taken, the worlds I have broken. Jake thought about it carefully. The old Zarafel had been a monster, there was no denying that, but the woman learning to play chess and asking about birthday traditions was someone different, someone better. I believe in the person you are becoming, he said finally. Not the one you used to be. They spoke sensors, detected new ships approaching Earth, but these were different. These vessels broadcast signals of peace and carried delegations from species that had once been Vorthan subjects. They had come not for war, but for the possibility of reconciliation. The galaxy was changing, and at the center of that change were an ancient Empress learning to love, and a human man teaching her how. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time in 50,000 years, it held genuine hope. The hidden fortress world appeared before them like a jewel carved from starlight. Zarafel's hands trembled as she piloted their ship toward the ancient Vorthan stronghold. This place held the deepest secrets of her former empire, and Jake could feel her fear radiating through their mental connection. I have not returned here since the Great Rebellion, she told him. Her voice was barely above a whisper. This world contains the archive of souls. Every consciousness I ever conquered is preserved. Here I thought them trophies once, now they feel like accusations. Jake placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. The warmth of human contact seemed to steady her, but he could see the weight of 50 millennia pressing down on her spirit. Dr. Megan Torres sat nearby studying ancient Vorthan texts she had been translating since their arrival. The fortress itself defied description. Crystalline spires twisted through clouds that sparkled with trapped lightning. Energy bridges connected floating islands where impossible gardens grew in patterns that hurt the mind to observe. Everything pulsed with the rhythm of a vast heartbeat. Their ship-landed automated systems recognized Zarafel's presence. The fortress began awakening from its long sleep. Lights cascaded through the crystal structures, like liquid starlight, and ancient machines hummed to life. Jake felt the immense power contained within these walls, enough energy to reshape galaxies. Welcome home, Empress, a voice spoke directly into their minds. It came from everywhere and nowhere, sounding like a chorus of the dead. Jake shuddered, but Zarafel straightened her shoulders with grim determination. I am no longer that Empress, she replied aloud. I have come to face what I have done, and to make amends if possible. Laughter echoed through the crystal halls, cold and bitter. Amends, the voice repeated. You speak of amends to those you destroyed. You consumed entire civilizations. Zarafel turned them into extensions of your will. How do you make amends to the dead? Show me, Jake said, stepping forward. I need to understand what happened here. The fortress responded by opening a pathway of light, leading deeper into its heart. As they walked through corridors lined with memory crystals, Jake began to see flashes of the past worlds burning under Vorthan assault, entire species kneeling before Zarafel's throne, their minds stripped away until only obedient shells remained. Zarafel wept as she witnessed her former self through Jake's eyes. The woman who had learned to love was confronting the monster she had once been. Each memory crystal showed another atrocity, another world consumed, another species enslaved. I remember thinking they were better off this way, she whispered. They had no more pain or fear or uncertainty under my control. I believed I was bringing them peace. Dr. Torres looked up from her translations. Your Majesty, the texts speak of something called the collective integration. It seems your empire discovered a way to merge conquered consciousness together. The corridor opened into a vast chamber at the fortress heart. Within it stood a pillar of pure energy that stretched from floor to ceiling. Thousands of faces appeared and disappeared in its swirling depths. Jake could hear whispers in languages that predated human civilization. Behold, the voice said, the collective of all we once were, before you stole our individuality. We have waited eons for this moment. Zarafel, you will face judgment from every soul you have wronged. The energy pillar pulsed, and suddenly Jake found himself surrounded by countless beings. They were not solid, but made of memory and will. Each one carried the pain of their species' destruction. Each one demanded justice. For crimes beyond counting we were the Kantari. The first voice said we built cities of song that harmonized with our 3 suns. You silenced our music forever, we were the Delvani. Another cried, we lived as one with the forests of our world. You turned our symbiosis into slavery. More voices joined the chorus, each telling the story of their civilization ending. Each species had been unique and beautiful before Zarafel conquest. Now they existed only as memories preserved in crystal tombs. Jake felt Zarafel breaking down beside him. The full weight of her actions crashed over her like a tsunami of guilt. She had committed genocide on a scale that dwarfed anything in human history. How could anyone find redemption for such crimes? But then Jake noticed something strange among the angry voices. The collective was not united in their hatred. Some of the consciousness seemed more curious than vengeful. They watched Zarafel break down with something approaching sympathy. You feel genuine remorse, one of them observed. This is new. The old Empress never questioned her actions. She has learned to love another, added. Love changes everything, even gods. Not all agreed with this assessment. Many voices called for Zarafel destruction. They wanted her to experience the same loss of self that she had inflicted on them, but a growing number seemed intrigued by her transformation. Jake stepped forward, addressing the collective directly. I cannot defend what she did in the past, but I have seen her change. I have watched her learn empathy and compassion. She is not the same being who conquered your worlds. The Kantari voice spoke again. You are the immune one, the one who can stand against Vorthan power, yet you choose to stand with her. Why? Because everyone deserves a chance to become better than they were, Jake replied. Even someone who has done terrible things can choose to do good instead. The collective fell silent as they processed this concept. Many of them had never encountered the human idea of redemption. Their own species had different concepts of justice and morality. But Jake's emotions reached them through his connection with Zarafel's rifle. Finally found her voice again. I cannot undo what I have done, she said, her words carrying across the vast chamber, but I can ensure it never happens again. I can use my power to protect instead of conquer, to heal instead of harm. Some of the collective began to glow brighter, their forms becoming more solid. They were choosing to engage with this possibility of change. Others remained in the shadows, clinging to their anger and pain. If you truly wish to make amends, the Kantari said, then help us find peace. We have existed in this state for 50,000 years, neither alive nor dead. Let us choose our own. Fatezarafel nodded, tears of liquid starlight streaming down her face. I will free you all. Every consciousness trapped here will be given the choice to move on to whatever comes next, or to remain, if they prefer. I will no longer hold anyone against their wills. She raised her hands and power flowed from her into the collective. The energy pillar began to change, becoming less rigid and more fluid. The trapped souls found themselves able to move and think independently. For the first time in millennium, I chose to fade away, passing into whatever realm awaited departed spirits. Others decided to remain as guides and teachers for future generations. A few angry voices withdrew deeper into the fortress, choosing to nurse their hatred rather than accept change. The chamber filled with light as thousands of souls found their freedom. Some paused to thank Zarafel for her change of heart. Others simply disappeared without acknowledgement, but all of them left as free beings making their own choices. Jake felt the fortress itself beginning to change. The oppressive weight of ancient guilt was lifting, replaced by something lighter. The stronghold was transforming from a monument to conquest into a memorial. For the lost, Dr. Torres approached them with her translation tablet. The ancient texts speak of a final prophecy, she said. When the Empress learns to weep for her victims, the galaxy will know a new age has begun. Outside the fortress, sensors detected massive fleets approaching from all directions. The enemy alliance had finally tracked them down, and they were bringing enough firepower to destroy star systems. But something had changed in Zarafel. The guilt and pain she had faced had not weakened her but purified her. She turned to Jake with eyes that held both sorrow and determination. I know who I was and what I did, but I also know who I choose to be. Now will you help me show the galaxy that change is possible even for monsters? Jake took her hand, feeling the connection between them stronger than ever. Together they would face whatever came next. Not as conqueror and subject, but as partners in the long work of redemption. The hardest battles still lay ahead. Earth burned under the combined assault of 1,000 alien warships. The enemy alliance had brought everything they had: plasma cannons that could crack moons, antimatter torpedoes that devoured space itself, and quantum disruptors that unmade matter. At the atomic level, General Maya Rodriguez coordinated the desperate defense from the command center while Jake and Zarafel watched from orbit. The old me would have ended this in seconds, Zarafel said quietly, her hands clenched as another human ship exploded in brilliant fire. Every instinct I have demands that I destroy them all before they can hurt you. Jake felt her struggle through their mental bond. The ancient Empress was fighting 50,000 years of conditioning that screamed for overwhelming retaliation, but she had promised to find another way, and he could see her determination to keep that promise even as Earth suffered. There has to be a solution that does not require mass destruction, he told her. You have shown mercy. Before you can do it again, Admiral Kate Morrison appeared on their communication screen. Her uniform was torn, and her face was streaked with soot from fires that raged through the fleet command center. Collins, we need a miracle. The defense grid is failing and we have maybe an hour before they break through. Surafel closed her eyes and reached out with her cosmic awareness. Jake felt himself drawn into her expanded consciousness, and together they touched every mind in the battle. Human defenders dying with courage, enemy attackers driven by ancient hatred and fear, civilians hiding in shelters across Earth. But Jake sensed something else among the enemy forces: doubt and confusion. Many of the alien soldiers had heard stories of Zarafel transformation. They had expected to face the old tyrant, but instead found someone who refused to use her full power against them. I can feel their uncertainty, he told Zarafel. They came here expecting a monster, but you are not giving them what they expected. She opened her glowing eyes and looked at him with wonder. You are right, my chosen one. They prepared for the Empress, who ruled through fear, but they do not know how to fight someone who chooses restraint. Together they reached out, not to control the enemy minds, but to show them memories. Jake shared his own experiences of Zarafel learning to love, while she provided glimpses of her genuine remorse for past actions. The effect rippled through the attacking fleets like a shockwave. Ship after ship began powering down weapons as their crews experienced something unprecedented from a Vorthan, a plea for understanding rather than a command to obey. Some vessels continued fighting, but others started withdrawing from the battle. Thales, a young Vorthan survivor who had joined their cause, spoke up from the bridge. Your Majesty, some of the enemy commanders are requesting to speak with you directly. They seem confused by what they are sensing. The main screen appeared. Representatives from dozen different species. All of them had been enemies of the Vorthan Empire, but now they looked uncertain rather than hostile. Jake could see the exact moment when they truly understood that Zarafel had changed. This is impossible, said a Helian admiral. Your species cannot feel remorse. Your brains lack the neural pathways for true empathy. Thought the same thing once, Zarafel replied, but my connection to Jake, and through him to all humanity, has awakened something in me that I never knew existed. I have learned that love creates new possibilities. The enemy leaders conferred among themselves in a dozen languages. Jake watched their faces as they struggled with concepts their cultures had never associated with Vorthons. Some remained skeptical, but others seemed genuinely curious about this transformation. A Delvani commander spoke next. If you have truly changed, then prove it. End this battle without violence. Show us that the tyrant Empress is truly dead. Looked at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. Then she did something unprecedented in galactic history. She opened her mind completely to every consciousness in the solar system, human and alien alike, suddenly had access to her memories, her emotions, her genuine transformation. The effect was overwhelming. Enemy soldiers experienced her love for Jake, her horror at her past crimes, her desperate desire to become worthy of the trust he had placed in her. They felt her loneliness over 50,000 years and her joy at finally learning what friendship meant. When the psychic connection ended, the battle was over. Enemy fleets powered down their weapons and began organizing into a peaceful formation. Many of the alien commanders were weeping as they experienced empathy from a Vorthan for the first time in their species. History. Jake realized what Zarafel had done. She had made herself completely vulnerable to every mind in the system. Any of them could have attacked her while her defenses were down, but instead of exploitation, they had found connection. The collective voice spoke from the memorial world where freed souls watched the proceedings. You have given us the greatest gift possible, Zarafel. You have shown the galaxy that even the worst among us can choose redemption. The days that followed, delegations arrived from across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for millennia sat down to negotiate together. Zarafel's presence as a reformed tyrant gave them hope that any conflict could be resolved. Jake found himself appointed as the first human ambassador to the Galactic Reconciliation Council. It was a job that nobody had trained for, since nothing like it had ever existed before. His main qualification seemed to be his ability to teach ancient beings about modern concepts like forgiveness and second chances. Zarafel established what she called the New Compact. Instead of conquering worlds, she offered protection to any species that requested it. Instead of forcing obedience, she provided resources and technology freely. The former Vorthan Empire became a voluntary alliance based on mutual benefit, but perhaps the most surprising development was Zarafel's personal transformation. She approached Jake one day looking unusually nervous for a being who could rearrange solar systems. My chosen one, she said, I have been studying human courtship customs, and I believe I understand them now. I would like to formally request that you consider me as a romantic partner. Jake stared at her. The most powerful being in the galaxy was asking him out on a date. Her expression was hopeful, but also terrified of rejection. It was the most human moment he had ever seen from Harry Wood. Like that very much, he told her, but we should probably start slowly, maybe dinner and a movie. She brightened immediately. I have prepared a small demonstration of affection, she said. With a gesture, she rearranged 3 nearby star systems into the shape of a heart. The stellar formation would be visible from Earth for the next 1,000,000 years. Jake laughed. That is very sweet, but next time, maybe just flowers. No, she said, looking embarrassed. I am still learning the appropriate scale for romantic gestures. Their first official date was dinner at a small restaurant on Earth. Zarafel spent most of the evening asking questions about human customs and explaining Vorthan history. In return, she was fascinated by the concept of anniversaries and wanted to know if rearranging galaxies was an acceptable wedding gift. The restaurant staff had no idea they were serving the former tyrant of the galaxy. She looked like any other beautiful woman on a date asking her boyfriend to explain why humans put candles on birthday cakes. As they walked through the park afterward, Zarafel took his hand with careful gentleness. She still sometimes forgot her own strength, but she was learning. The woman who had once crushed civilizations was now worried about holding hands too tightly. Thank you, she said quietly, for seeing something in me worth saving. For teaching me that power means nothing without someone to share it with. Jake squeezed her hand gently. You taught me something too, he replied, that anyone can change if they truly want to, no matter what they have done in the past. Above them, the heart-shaped constellation she had created sparkled in the night sky, a reminder that even the darkest history could be transformed into something beautiful. The galaxy was changing, and at its center were 2 beings who had learned that love really could conquer all, not through force or domination, but through the simple choice to see the best in each other and help it grow. The universe had never seen anything quite like them before, and Jake suspected it never would again. They were writing a new story among the stars, one act of kindness at a time.